I think Gary Gensler mentioning Ripple, their currency, and what it can do, and then saying right after that the banks want in on this and they're going to want to participate. And maybe if you're a company offering something like this, you need to give up 50% of your supply so that they don't sabotage you from receiving that market share. Tells me everything I need to know about whether or not there's going to be a future demand for the token, the asset, the protocol, the ledger, the decentralized exchange, the automated market makers, global public liquidity pools, tokenization, derivatives, cross-border payments, cross-chain communicative abilities across other networks and protocols, essentially interoperating with messaging, the goddamned payments that are done in the asset, that data being incorporated into the payment messages that are being forwarded between all of these different institutions.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. There's a lot to unpack in this video, so let's dive right in. In this video, T essentially claims that Gary Gensler first mentions Ripple and XRP, then states that banks want to participate in it, but would require Ripple to give up 50% of their tokens to prevent the banks from sabotaging Ripple's market growth. T goes on to say that, based on Gary Gensler's statements, he now has all the insight he needs about XRP's future, covering aspects such as demand for the token, the protocol, the ledger, the AMM, global liquidity pools, tokenization, derivatives, cross-border payments, interoperability, messaging, and payments. In other words, T believes that Gensler's supposed comments about Ripple and XRP confirmed everything about XRP's future and solidified his bullish stance on the asset. Sounds extremely bullish, right? Well, I decided to double-check what Gary Gensler actually said to verify the validity of T's claims. First off, let me just say this. Gary Gensler didn't mention XRP or Ripple at all in the segment of the video T referenced, or in the entire video for that matter. I watched the full video titled Assessing Use Cases, which you can find on YouTube. The lesson focuses on public and private blockchains, and neither XRP nor Ripple is mentioned anywhere. This means T essentially fabricated the part where he claims Gensler first mentions Ripple and XRP. That simply didn't happen. I don't know what else to say about it. It's just not true, and this changes the entire narrative. If Gensler didn't mention Ripple or XRP as T claimed, how can you use that Gensler clip to justify conviction about XRP's future?
Can a permission blockchain adequately address whatever the use case is? And how can you actually get jumpstart broad adoption? That's your network challenges. How, when you start Uber, can you get a lot of people to use your Uber app? But in this case, if I can use the consumer credit, I thought the consumer credit idea was really a neat one. Maybe it could go right at the heart of a lot of market power, but now, how do you get all the auto dealers? How do you get all the employers? How do you get the banks to actually say, I want to get rid of First Union and I want the blockchain and money final project teams, you know. And by the way, just replacing one central monopolist with another central monopolist, a lot of commercial banks aren't terribly excited about that. Maybe you're going to have to give some ownership. Maybe you'll have to give 50% of your ownership to the 20 banks that are now, you know, part of this. I mean, there are other ways to build incentive systems. Maybe you put a native token in there, and you give you know, them the native token. You know, so there may be other incentive ways to beat the current monopolist, and you know, but I, having been around commercial banks for a long time, they really are looking for ways to replace their aggregators in their back office, whether it's clearing, settlement, exchanges, credit agencies. But they are deeply understanding, because they are pretty ambitious and very good at making money as well. They deeply understand that every idea that's pitched to them is somebody who currently is small but wants to get big and gain market power. So they're also always thinking about how to ensure that there's a check to slow down your startup from gaining market power 5, 10, and 15 years from now. They don't want you to be the next clearinghouse like the Chicago Mercantile Exchange or Intercontinental Exchange. They don't want you to be the next central node of market power. So you might share some of that with them, or you might find an incentive system.
In that clip, Gensler was explaining in general how a crypto company might jumpstart its network for broader adoption by offering tokens as incentives. He was illustrating how tokens could be used to encourage target markets to adopt a solution. It's important to note that he was speaking in general terms and not specifically about Ripple or XRP. However, this is where the XRP community tends to take the general idea he presented and apply it to Ripple. Because Gensler does give an example involving banks, suggesting that if a company is competing with banks, it might incentivize them by sharing ownership, perhaps offering 50% of the company or including a native token as part of the deal. It's one thing to say if Ripple offers 50% of tokens to banks as an incentive to adopt their protocol, they may be interested in doing so, and an entirely different claim to say banks want to use XRP, are eager to participate, but first demand 50% of the token supply. There's a significant difference between these two statements. Gensler also explains that banks are exploring ways to improve their back-end systems. However, they're aware that new ideas often come from small companies aiming to grow and gain market power. Banks may see these companies as potential threats and attempt to slow their growth. As a result, startups might offer incentives to banks to address this issue. Now, I know some in the XRP community will latch on to this and argue that the SEC targeted Ripple to slow it down because it posed a threat to banks. Whether that's true or not, I can't say. What I do know is that Ripple has been using XRP as an incentive for banks and payment service providers for years by selling it to them at heavily discounted prices. A notable example is SBI Holdings in Japan. For more details, check out my video. Did 1,700 financial institutions buy XRP from Ripple to use? We know Ripple has had sales contracts with institutions, selling XRP below market value as an incentive to onboard them. This practice is a factor in why the SEC pursued Ripple. Thus, I'd argue that Ripple has been leveraging its token as an incentive mechanism all along to attract customers to its ODL system. As for the narrative that if Ripple transfers its Escrow tokens to major banks, they'll all adopt XRP, I find this claim to be on shaky ground. Like many XRP-related narratives, it assumes that banks need XRP, as though it's the only viable solution. It also implies that major banks are simply waiting for Ripple to hand over some Escrow tokens before fully adopting the XRPL as a cornerstone of the financial system. This assumption is flawed. Many banks have spent years developing alternative solutions to the XRPL. They aren't sitting idly by, waiting for XRP. Instead, they've been experimenting with various permissioned blockchains and ledgers, as I've highlighted in numerous videos. Frankly, I don't think major banks care about XRP to the extent the XRP community believes they do. Ripple has been distributing its tokens at rock-bottom prices for years, yet significant utility traction and demand for XRP still hasn't materialized. I wouldn't be surprised if Ripple already offered major banks large amounts of XRP at a discount, only for those banks to opt for their own solutions, like JP Morgan did. In the clip, Gensler also uses a hypothetical involving hospitals sharing a database for medical records to illustrate how a native token could incentivize broader adoption.
And it could be something that has no central authority right now, no central intermediary, and it's just had to jump start something. I think in that circumstance, it's more likely you need a native token. I think if you're trying to jump start a network, and there's a lot of collective action reasons that will still face you. Some of our colleagues, Andy Lippman and others over at the Media Lab, spent a lot of time a year and a half ago on a medical records approach with Beth Israel Hospital locally here. And if Andy were here, he'd say, but I still have the collective action issues. How do I get a bunch of hospitals and a bunch of doctors, and how do I get all that collective action to work together to use kind of one database system, if you wish. So I think to get over that collective action issues, you start getting into, well, this native token might be an interesting way to do that.
So as you can see, Gensler was discussing general concepts, not XRP or Ripple specifically, when he mentioned using tokens as an incentive system to jumpstart a network. This is already a common practice among many crypto companies. which give away tokens for free to companies to be node operators or sell them at discounted rates like Ripple did with XRP. But offering tokens to incentivize adoption still doesn't guarantee that the target market will adopt that solution. They might still not be interested in using that solution, or could choose to build their own systems instead. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification so as to not miss my next video.